will talk about a very fascinating, surprising topic, and I think which is with a lot of suspense. No, it's about a very boring and dry stuff. It's about ETSI-compliant signing of PDF. I got a question just before the presentation from somebody from the audience. What's the connection between EIDAS and PDF signing? Because this is not very obvious, these both things. That's right. If you look at the EIDAS regulation of the EU, you will not find any mentioning of PDF. Nevertheless, there is a lot of mentioning about signing processes, about signing certificates and so on. And the most important and well-established document format for doing this job is PDF still. Even if other formats as well support the digital signing, PDF, I think, has a market share of 99.9% where the documents are to be signed. This is a graphics from the EU, from Antonio Servida, from 2016, and shows the motivation of the EU to do this regulation, this EIDAS regulation, because it was clear since the 2010 around that the growth in digital economy will need a sort of framework, a sort of regulation to bring the different country national regulations together and to form one common digital market, this so-called digital economy. And before that, there have been already regulations from 1999, but the national freedom of interpretation of these EU regulations were relatively large. So if you wanted to copy or to send a digitally signed document from Germany to Italy or to Spain and have the same legal effect in every country, it was a really hard stuff to do, and we have to deal with all the national specifics, and therefore there was a big need to form a common framework all over Europe. This EIDAS regulation, the acronym stands for Electronic Identification and Trust Services, was published in August 2014. And it's on about the electronic identification and trust service for electronic transactions in the internal market and repealing directive. That means this old directive has been drawn back, and therefore this is the new one. And the most important thing about this regulation is that it is this regulation overrules national regulations. So it's not possible anymore that a country in the EU can say, yeah, it's nice a regulation, but we say no, in our country you need to do it in that way, or we require that you have a signature with that attributes. They have to be there, otherwise we will not look at them as legally binding. This is not possible anymore, and more or less most of the countries since 2014 have published their own legal regulations which just say that they adopt this EU regulation one by one, so that there is no change, and that this will affect all the national laws which deal with signatures, handwritten signatures, or even electronic signatures. The most relevant trust services of EIDAS, just to show it to you, this is the content of the EIDAS regulation. It deals with the mutual recognition of e-identification, a very important stuff. That means if you have an EID, from Estonia and you want to start a legal process, an official process in a public authority in Portugal, you can use your EID from Estonia at Lisbon even to do this job. The way around, if somebody is coming from Spain with an EID card to Frankfurt and wants to open a business, he can use this EID at the public authorities to identify himself. And all these countries in the EU have to recognize each other's EID systems, as long as they are on the same trust level. This is it's the same, but okay, and this is still a little bit tricky, but more or less it is the sense of the regulation that this mutual recognition will work all over Europe. The second part of the regulation is about the supervision of the certification service providers. That means these are these authorities who certify companies or public authorities who want to offer such a trust service and to have a common standard of quality and of security all over Europe. These certification service providers are also regulated. So it should not be possible, for example, if you say, I want to start a trust service for electronic signing, but the certification service providers in Germany, they are too strict and too expensive, and no, I will not undergo their regime. So I will go, for example, to Malta, because there is a nice one, and it's much cheaper, and they can do the job in only 5 or 6 days, and let's go there. You can go to other country, but these certification service provider, even in Malta, I don't hope that somebody is here from Malta, but they still have to undergo the same certification supervision than the certification bodies in the other countries. And then, last but not least, we have these qualified electronic trust services, about signature seals, timestamping, registered delivery service, website authentication, and electronic documents. And if you ask me, what is a trust service about electronic documents? Yeah, there is one sentence in the regulation, and this sentence is so generic that you can, think about something else. There is no specific explanation about this, though. So this EIDAS regulation focuses very much on signature seals, timestamping, delivery service, and a little bit about website authentication, but not on electronic documents. This is sort of placeholder for later on services. We'll see in the next years. Okay. Let's come back about PDF versions. This is a slide in a slightly other version. You have already seen it at the presentation of DAF and about the history of PDF. And I just want to show it to you because since PDF 1.3, PDF supports natively digital signatures. That means since 1999, you have this capability in the product and also in the standard. And then after that, this moved on. This was get better. There have been some things get deprecated during the time. And in the newest version of the standard in ISO 32000-2 published last year, we have the first time a reference for digital signing to the so-called ETSI standards. Before that, there were only references to RFCs, and some other ISO standards, but no mentioning of ETSI standards. In the meantime, ETSI, as the European Standardization Organization, moved on very, very quickly, and they have produced an overwhelming bunch of standards concerning certificates, seals, signatures, and handling about that, becoming a trust service provider, and so on. And therefore, even the ISO standard 32000-2 took this into account and made the reference to the ETSI and not to the old RFCs again. Just to have a very short and very condensed overview about the standards, ETSI has published about this, and these are only an excerpt. If you look at the ETSI website and you just make on the keyboard digital signature or electronic signature, you will get about 45, 50 references to standards, technical specifications, European norms, and so on. So, but the most important, especially also for PDF, are mentioned here on this slide. So, beginning with the TS 319-102 for procedures for creation and validation of ADIS, and that means Advanced Digital Electronic Signatures. About creation and validation and so on. They sometimes have 2 different parts and so on. And you even see here at the EN 319-142-1 and -2 and -3, the so-called PADIS digital signatures. So this is the advantage of PDF, that they have their own ETSI standard formulated. So these PADIS, these PDF-based advanced digital electronic signatures, they specify very, very clearly and in a lot of detail how a PDF gets signed and what you have to do, what you have to take into account, and which different signing profiles, depending on the use case you want to match, has to be applied in your case. We will come to this in a few moments later. But there are also other ones, especially if you look at CADIS. This is a basic signature format, which is also, if you look directly at it, identical with the container, which is implemented within PDF, and then XADIS, how you pronounce it, about XML signatures, and a little bit more new one is called ASIC, as Associated Signature Containers, which is nothing else than a zip container containing signed documents and dictionaries about these signed documents and cross-references. For example, if you sign a modern Word document, a docx document directly in Word, you end up with a signed Word. And if you just change the extension of the resulting file from docx to ASIC, you have an ASIC container. That means there is a profile which gives you a directly one-to-one correspondence between a signed Word document and an ASIC container. The same thing happens if you're using LibreOffice or OpenOffice. This was the first version that they have introduced into ASIC. Even there you have, if you sign a LibreOffice document, you end up with an ASIC container. Just the same. Okay. I had a look at the beginning at the actual ISO 32000-2 standard from ISO. And there is one chapter, I think 12.8, dealing with digital signatures. And I've already mentioned that we have the references to ETSI standards within the ISO document and not about to RFCs. That's not completely correct. So on the left side, you see the ETSI standards, dealing with signature formats, with the creation, validation, with the CADIS, PADIS, ASIC, and so on. On the right side, you see the 3 standards of ETSI which are mentioned within ISO 32000-2. There are no other standards mentioned or referenced in this chapter. That means the basic elements for a PDF signature are derived from standards from about CADES, that means the CMS container, and from PADES, that means the packaging, and the additional constructs introduced especially for signing PDF. And the last one, the RFC 5816, about timestamping and the timestamping format. Just about this. So the ISO is not so, it doesn't mention every standard, they only reference to these ones. PDF and signatures, as I already presented also in the last years, PDF standard supports only X509 based digital signatures. That means you cannot introduce a PGP based signature within PDF. There is no support for this. Okay, you can include a PGP signature as a separate file, as a file attachment. Okay, doesn't matter. But there is no native support for this within PDF. That means you have to go to certificate-based digital signatures. And since PDF 1.3, you can embed these ones. Most of the PDF viewers have this added functionality for signing and verification. There have been some problems in former years about the validation, because as I often say, validation is much more complicated than signing. And this was due to the national regulations, this was not handled correctly by every product. So especially if you have an international product, you cannot deal with every national specific implementation of a regulation, and therefore this was always a problem. And but this has changed now due to EIDAS, because EIDAS gives you very clear rules about how to validate an electronic signature and how to decide whether it's EIDAS compliant or not. Okay, and the other thing is also a precaution for multiple signatures. That means you can sign your document multiple times, but in a serial manner. So you cannot sign it in parallel, but in serial. This is the normal way, and there we use the versioning concept of PDF. That means we can add additional versions to the end of the PDF, and every additional version contains one signature for its own, and so on. This can be continued forever. Okay, that's about this. In PDFA, there we, in total, PDF supports 3 signature types. One is the most important, is the document signature, also known as author or certification signature, and these are the ones we are looking at now. And the other ones for manipulation detection and prevention or usage right signatures are not important in this context. They are not standardized within the ETSI norms, and also are not mentioned within any EIDAS services descriptions. Technically, they are handled as annotations. They must have an appearance stream, even if it's empty. And this appearance stream defines the visual appearance. That means if you want to have a seal or the scanned image of your handwritten signing within the document, this is the visual appearance, and this is done by this appearance stream. This is not part of the signature. It's just a sort of representative of our signature, but it is not the signature itself. In PDFA, only document signatures are allowed. That's a very old rule and still valid. So you may not have any usage rights signatures within your PDFA. Within PDF, you may use it, but not within PDFA. Signing a PDF document is also common stuff. On one side, you have your certificate together with a private key. and additional attributes and so on. And then if you want to sign a PDF with an embedded signature, you split the PDF into two halves, and you construct a so-called signature CMS container, and then shift this container in the gap between the first half and the second half. Once you have done this, and you fuse together all three parts, the PDF is fixed, and every change in the PDF size or whatever else will result in a breaking of the signature. This is also this was very good mechanism to do this, but there was one big disadvantage about this, because the gap has a fixed size, and if you, for example, want to add validation information, which can be dynamic, because the OCSP responses can be in different sizes and so on. The CRLs you want to embed have normally different sizes. This can end up very quickly that you ran out of space within this gap, and there was one thing necessary to handle such dynamic data around signing a PDF, and this led then to the introduction of the PADIS standard, where PDF objects will then be introduced, and they then contain this dynamic data around a signature. The ETSI standards have also a kind of history. So the first ETSI technical specifications about PDF signing, I think, were from beginning of 2000 to 2001, and they started to define a lot of different profiles, because a lot of people come along and say, oh, I have a special use case, and I need also to have this covered by a specific profile. Okay, the ETSI people, they are from industry, said, yeah, okay, we will do this. And they ended up with, in the first step, I think about 10 to 12 different profiles. In the meantime, most of these profiles are useless, or there are no real use cases behind that, and therefore, and also in the light of the new EIDAS regulation, ETSI decided to make us a new baselining. That means, okay, we will consolidate this big amount of different profiles, and then come back to very few specific ones, and this should be then used in the future when you sign PDF. And these so-called baseline profiles are part of 319.142-1, and they are called baseline basic, baseline timestamp, baseline long-term, and baseline long-term archive. These are these acronyms BB, BT, BLT, BLTA. And the difference between them is only what amount of verification stuff has to be included with such a signature. For example, the most simplest way to do an PADIS conformant signature is to apply the basic profile BB. There you only have to include some signed and some unsigned attributes together with the signature itself. If you want to have a more reliable signature, which you can validate a little bit better, you can include a timestamp within the signature. This is not the same than adding a separate timestamp. This timestamp is included within the signature itself, and then you can end up with a so-called long-term validation profile, also known as LTV, long-term validation, which you can see in some products, like, for example, in Adobe Reader, Adobe Acrobat, or in our Sign Live. You have this long-term validation. There, these signed and unsigned attributes are included, and timestamp is included, and also the complete verification information. And the big advantage of this profile, this BLT, is that you can take a document which is signed with BLT and you can validate this document even if you are offline. That means all necessary verification information is included within the document. This is so-called really self-contained. In the other, if you look at the other ones, at BB and BT, you always need an online connection to request the OCSP responses from the trust centers who have issued the certificates. This is the difference. So especially therefore, if you want to sign documents and then move them to an archive and keep them there for a long time, and you don't deal about any changes in the document, the best way to do and the best way to apply is to use the BLT profile for signing, because then you can retrieve this document even after 10 years and then validate this document without any online connection to a trust center for retrieving the OCSP responses. Because it can happen to you that the trust center will not be there anymore, and then your validation will result in a failure. And this is not the thing you would like to have. So in our experience as a company with our customers, most of them are now moving for using the BLT signing profile for doing their job, because then they are so secure and they can handle the documents without any online connection. The other one, the last one, the BLTA, is a profile which is to be used if you have to re-sign the document after the validity period of your cryptographic algorithms. That means, for example, if somebody says that the hash algorithm or the asymmetric key algorithm gets weak after 7 years or 8 years, then you will apply such an actual timestamp together with verification information to the document, and therefore reseal it again and keep it valid for the next period of 5, 6, 7 years. It depends on the advances in cryptographic technology. Just to show you the remaining ones, these have been the older profiles, the EBS, the EPES, and so on. And if you have ever looked at the old ETSI documents specifying these profiles, you will sometimes shake your head and say, for what is this? Who has thought about creating such a profile? So they have, for example, created a signing profile for signing the XML content which is embedded within the PDF. At a time where people required that an electronic invoice who has been included as XML within PDF and submitted to the customer has to be signed, this was a meaningful profile. But in nowadays, nobody cares about this. So this is still there. You can still apply such a profile. The biggest problem will be to find an application who is capable then to verify such a signature, because most of them will not even recognize this. So I don't know about standard products who look at the attachments and whether they are signed and then make a validation of that. This is a specific use case. Even also this profile is XFA, where we have signed XFA data, stems from a time where also Adobe pushed very much the use of XFA for dynamic forms, and that they will get signed within your PDF. In nowadays, it is not a very common use case anymore, and even there, I don't know about much products who are supporting this profile. And a newer one, this is the -3 part, is the DTS, the document timestamp, which has been specified, I think, 2 years ago by ETSI. I think this is a very useful profile. And this timestamp signature describes a signature where you don't include a normal signature, which stems from a personal or an organizational certificate, but which is just a timestamp. And also from our experience with customers, most of the use cases we encounter in the market are focused on timestamping the documents. That means that you prove they have existed at that time and then move them to the archive. It doesn't matter whether John Mitchell or wherever else or Bernd has signed this document at that time as an operator. No, the more important information is when has this document existed in this representation, and this can be handled very, very nicely with the DTS profile. I have a sort of test of your visual capabilities. Sorry, this is due to the export from my Mac to PDF, who has optimized the resolution of the bitmaps. I've just an example PDF document to show you the internal structure of this with the Padas LT profile. This, as you can see here, this has two signatures. The main signature here, which is signed by our company and so on. Everything is fine. Therefore, the green check marks, and below you have the timestamp from a timestamp service from SwissSign, and they also result in green check marks. And if I look now a little bit more in detail into the first signature, you will see the first half of the hierarchical structure, which is behind the signature on the right side. This starts with the signature itself. That means the digest and the mathematical signature. Then you have to include a signer certificate. And within the signer certificate, you have to include the whole certificate path. That means there we have the Swisscom root CA. They have issued the Swisscom Sapphire CA certificate, and this Swisscom Sapphire CA certificate has issued our Intasis certificate. This is a certification path. And to validate the certification path, they have to go one step further, look at the certificate of the trust center. Okay, already also we have the digest and that mathematical signature and so on. And we have here a CRL, a revocation list. This revocation list has been requested online. Therefore, we have an online request. This online request was signed. This signing has been done by a different certificate, and this certificate also has to be approved with a certificate path, with OCSP responses, and so on and so on. That means you have a very hierarchical structure of just a simple certificate for this type, and every response on this path from the trust centers about the validity of the certificates is included within this signature structure. And this is the lower part, still the same signature. There we have our Intasis certificate. With this, it has no CRL, but therefore we have an OCSP response. This OCSP response has been signed by an OCSP daemon from Swisscom. And this Swisscom OCSP daemon uses a certificate from Swisscom Sapphire, and this has been then issued by Swisscom root. Also, again, the same path and so on, and every single answer, every single response to this whole structure has to be included within your PDF to ensure that the whole validation information for this type of signature is completely contained within your PDF, and it gives you the ability to validate this PDF without any further online connection. Yeah, okay, and last but not least, I've showed you in the first picture there is a timestamp. The timestamp itself has been issued by a different trust center. This different trust center has also a certificate path and so on, which is not the same than the one before, and so on. They are using CRLs and so on, and no OCSP. Okay, all this stuff has also been included within the PDF. And this makes it a little bit tricky, especially if you then further on have to pass this whole structure to make a validation whether the signature is fine or not. And this will show you. But all these structures, all these technologies are specified and very well described within the standards. So everything you need to do is reading the standards and then implement it, and you end up with a fine signing application. To give you this in a more schematical way, this is a so-called long-term archive structure within your PDF. And the really interesting thing about this is that for implementing such a long-term archiving structure, one has introduced new dictionary objects within PDF. That means PADAS is not only CADAS within the light of PDF, but PADAS introduces new objects within the PDF. To handle, as I said in the beginning, the dynamic information you have to include during such a signing and validation process. First of all, there is the DSS, the Document Security Storage, which is a reference dictionary to all VRIs, dictionaries to all certificates, OCSP responses, and so on. Then we have the verification-related information dictionary, which also is a reference dictionary to such informations. And then we have a bunch of informations, an entry for every certificate, an entry for every OCSP response, and so on and so on. And if you, last but not least, add the timestamp, and then also include the validation information of that timestamp, you add to your PDF a new version, and this version also contains a DSS, a VRI, and the additional validation data. And this can be continued and continued. That means your PDF will grow and grow through the years. Okay, it's not very big, so but it's amount of 20 to 50 kilobyte, depending whether you have a big CRL, for example, to include, or a short one. And therefore, this is a very specific topic. I think because this shows you that you have really these precautions in PDF to contain these informations about validation information in PDF structures. You will not find another signature format which is comparable to this and gives you these advantages. Okay, for the people who have very good eyes, even for me it's a little bit difficult. This is just a view with our tool into such a PDF. There you can see these internal structures. The people who want to know about the internal functions and the dictionary entries and so on, they can have a look at this. I can show it to you on my notebook, and then you can also see there directly, these informations are stored in interesting or not. It depends. Yeah, and another thing which is what I should have mentioned before I come to the end is the so-called trust anchor list. A very important thing about making or validating a signature as a qualified signature is that you have the real anchor for the root certificate. And in former times, every country had its own national root, and to validate, for example, in Italian qualified signatures, you had to import these lists from Italy into your tool and mark them as trusted and qualified. There have been, beside this, there have been company-based trust lists, and the most common is the Adobe Approved Trust List. They are still around, the AATL, and especially for the international market. And this gives you the advantage that if you have a certificate which is derived from a root certificate, which is a member of the Adobe Approved Trust List, this will validate in a signature. With this signature, certificate will validate as good with the green check mark within the Adobe tools. The EU has taken the approach not to build up a new catalog of all European roots who are regarded as qualified, but they have just a sort of pointer list to the national registries. This pointer list can then be imported by the various tools, and therefore now it is possible that you just receive a document, a PDF document signed by someone from Estonia with a qualified certificate from Estonia, and in your German, Italian, French or whatever else tool, this will then show up as valid and qualified. This is I think, a very big step in having a coherent view on the understanding of qualified. And as far as I know, the only one, Adobe as an international company, has implemented this European trust list route within their products. I think this is a very important stuff, so that you can now use also the Adobe products for validating different qualified signatures all over Europe. Yeah, is this still a challenge to do this signing? I think the signing is not so much the challenge, but as in my point of view, it's more the validating of a signature. This can be very complicated, especially you have to take into account the different profiles and so on, and to bring up the so-called green check mark, the final result. It can be really a hard job. The signing itself is well specified. You don't have so many degrees of freedom. The EU Trust List has simplified the pan-European validation very much, and but there is still no published standard at ETSI for the correct validation of signatures. It seems a little bit crazy for that very difficult stuff. There are some special task forces active at ETSI, and we expect in 1 or 2 years that we have such a standard. But in the moment, they are still under work, so you have to deal with more older technical specifications. And as I said, validation is the hard stuff, and validation needs proper explanation. That means even if you encounter a red mark on your validation history, this doesn't mean automatically that the whole signature is bad. And to explain this, I think we need to invest a little bit more efforts in the explanation of the result of such a validation, to give the user a better feeling and get better feedback about what has happened within the document itself. Yeah, I think this I will skip. This can be then heard in a couple of minutes in the parallel presentation. And yeah, I think now I'm at the end. I hope I have not overdrawn too much. Perfect, okay, just in time. Thank you.